Imagine this: Wichita, Kansas, 1958. You're a college student sitting in class, trying to figure out how to pay your tuition. Pizza is not something most people in Wichita have ever eaten. They think of it as an exotic Italian import. Something you might find in New York City, maybe, in the neighborhoods where Italian immigrants have settled. But out here in Kansas, most people wouldn't know a pizza from a pie. Then one afternoon, a local landlord approaches two brothers at Wichita State University. Her name is never recorded in history, but what she says changes everything. You see, she has a small building she can't rent. She's read something in the New York press about pizza becoming popular along the East Coast. She thinks it might make a good business. Are the brothers interested? The brothers are Dan and Frank Carney. Dan is 27, a recent graduate. Frank is 19, a freshman. Their father owned a grocery store, so they know something about food. They know almost nothing about pizza. In fact, Frank has eaten pizza exactly once in his life. But they need money, and this landlord has a building. So they call in a favor from a friend who knows how to make pizza, learn everything they can in 2 weeks, borrow $600 from their mother, and open for business on May 31st, 1958. Now get this, they mix their first batches of dough in a plastic baby bathtub. They give away free slices to anyone who walks by, just to get people to try it. And they need a name. They look at the building, small, squat, shaped like a little hut. They look at the sign out front. It has room for only 8 letters. Pizza. Pizza. That's 5. Hut. Hut. 3 letters. That's 8. Believe it or not, one of the most recognized brand names in the world was chosen because it fit on a sign. Welcome to Believe It or Not, the show where weird is real and the truth is stranger than fiction. I'm your host, Bryan, and today's story is about 2 college students, a $600 loan, a food that most of Kansas had never tasted, and how a tiny restaurant built in a converted bar became one of the largest fast food chains in the history of the world. This is the surprisingly fascinating story of Pizza Hut, and the details behind it that most people don't know. To understand how unlikely Pizza Hut's success was, you have to understand what pizza meant in America in 1958. It was nothing. Italian immigrants had been making pizza in cities like New York, Chicago, and Philadelphia since the early 1900s. In fact, the first pizzeria in the United States, Lombardi's, had been operating in Manhattan since 1905. And after World War II, American soldiers who had been stationed in Italy came home having developed a taste for it. But in Wichita, Kansas, in 1958, pizza was genuinely exotic. A foreign food. Something most local residents had never encountered and weren't sure they'd like. The Carney brothers didn't even intend to sell pizza at first. Frank had only tried it once in his life. But when they purchased the building to house their restaurant, the woman who sold it to them suggested they try out pizza. She'd recently read an article about pizza's popularity in New York, and it just so happened that the brothers knew a guy named John Bender, who knew how to make pizza, and helped them develop their first Pizza Hut recipe. 2 weeks of lessons, one friend who knew what he was doing, and a plastic baby tub full of dough. That's it. That was the foundation of what would become the largest pizza company in the world. The first day Pizza Hut opened, the Carney brothers gave away free pizza to get people through the door. It worked immediately. The pizza was good. The price was right. And Wichita, it turned out, was ready for pizza, whether it knew it or not. After just over a year, the Carneys opened 5 Wichita Pizza Huts. Then, they did something that would prove to be the real genius of the operation. They started franchising. They started franchising in 1959 with the first franchise location in Topeka, Kansas. The franchise fee was almost laughably low. $100 to open a location. $100 per month maximum. You see, the older brother Dan had studied the early models of McDonald's and Kentucky Fried Chicken during his time in the Air Force, and he understood that the real money wasn't in running one restaurant well. It was in building a system that other people could replicate. And he was right. By 1966, Pizza Hut had 145 locations and was still growing rapidly. In 1972, the 1,000th location opened. Within 10 years of 2 college students mixing dough in a baby bathtub, Pizza Hut had become a national institution. By 1977, Pizza Hut had grown to over 4,000 locations worldwide. Dan and Frank Carney made a decision. Sell. The brothers decided to sell the business to PepsiCo for over $300 million. $300 million! All from a $600 loan from their mother. But here's the twist that nobody sees coming. Frank Carney, the man who co-founded Pizza Hut, who built it from a baby bathtub to a billion-dollar empire, who sold it for $300 million, eventually became a franchisee himself. But not for Pizza Hut. For Papa John's Pizza. The founder of Pizza Hut, running Papa John's locations. Frank became a franchisee of Papa John's Pizza in 1994. By 2001, he owned 133 locations. And here's where things take a comedic turn. During legal struggles with Pizza Hut in the late 1990s, Papa John's ran commercial advertisements highlighting the fact, including a commercial showing Frank coming to a Pizza Hut stockholders meeting wearing a Papa John's apron, saying, "Sorry, guys." Here's what strikes me about Dan and Frank Carney. They didn't start with a vision. They didn't have a plan. Frank had eaten pizza just once. They learned to make it in 2 weeks from a friend. They named the restaurant after a sign. Every decision in the early days of Pizza Hut was made with incomplete information, limited resources, and no guarantee of anything. And that turns out to be how most real things get built. We have this idea that successful companies start with brilliant founders who saw the future clearly and executed a perfect plan. But Pizza Hut started because a landlord had an empty building and read something interesting in a newspaper. It grew because 2 brothers were willing to try something they'd never done before, learn as they went, and keep adjusting. The baby bathtub full of dough is the real origin story of Pizza Hut. Not a vision, not a strategy, just 2 people willing to try something new and figure out the rest on the way. Now, here are a few believe it or not facts I found while researching the podcast. Believe it or not, one early employee of Pizza Hut was future Pro Football Hall of Fame head coach Bill Parcells, who worked for the company while a college student and football player at Wichita State University. One of the most celebrated coaches in NFL history, winner of 2 Super Bowls with the New York Giants. Got his start making pizzas in Wichita. The man who once coached the greatest player in NFL history, Lawrence Taylor, once mixed dough at his local pizza joint. Believe it or not, the original Pizza Hut building, the tiny converted bar where Dan and Frank mixed their first dough in a baby bathtub, still exists. In 1986, the original Pizza Hut building found a fitting home on Wichita State University's campus. In 2017, the building was moved again to the east side of WSU's campus, where it now serves as a museum. The most visited pizza museum in America is a 550-square-foot former bar in Kansas, where 2 students once had no idea what they were doing. Believe it or not, Pizza Hut was the first company to offer pizza delivery. But the first delivery vehicle was a 3-wheeled scooter. The Aggieville, Kansas City Pizza Hut was the first to offer delivery on a 3-wheeled scooter. The global delivery industry that now employs millions of people worldwide to one man on a scooter in a small town in Kansas. Believe it or not, the name Pizza Hut almost wasn't the name. Accounts differ as to the exact origin, but one account says it was Dan's wife Beverly who suggested the name after looking at the building. Another says it was simply the constraint of the sign. A third says a family member made the observation about the hut's shape. Nobody agrees on exactly who said it first, which means one of the most valuable brand names in the world was coined in an offhand comment that nobody thought to write down. Believe it or not, Pizza Hut's distinctive red roof building style was designed in 1963, and the architect was paid $100 per store built to that design. For $100 per location, one architect created the visual identity that made Pizza Hut instantly recognizable from a highway at 60 miles per hour. That red roof became one of the most effective pieces of roadside branding in American business history. And the architect charged less per building than the brothers paid for their first franchise fee. And finally, believe it or not, Pizza Hut holds another record almost nobody knows about. In August 1994, Pizza Hut and the Santa Cruz operation announced PizzaNet, a pilot program that allowed consumers to use their own computer to order pizza delivery over the internet, making Pizza Hut the first company to sell anything commercially over the internet. The first thing ever purchased online, before Amazon, before eBay, before any of it, was a pizza. To be more precise, it was a large pizza with pepperoni, mushrooms, and extra cheese. From Pizza Hut in 1994. The internet began as a pizza delivery service. Now it's quiz time. 3 questions, one harder than the last. I ask the questions, you shout out the answers. Are you ready? Then let's get started. Question number 1. How much money did Dan and Frank Carney borrow from their mother to start Pizza Hut? And what did they use to mix their first dough? The answer? $600. And they mixed the dough in a plastic baby bathtub. Question 2. How did Pizza Hut get its name? And why is the answer slightly complicated? Here's the answer. There are at least 2 stories. 1. The building looked like a hut. 2. The name fit on the sign. You see, nobody agrees on exactly who said it first or which reason came first. One of the most valuable brands in the world was chosen almost by accident. And finally, number 3. True or false? Pizza Hut was the first company to sell something commercially over the internet. True. In 1994, Pizza Hut launched PizzaNet in Santa Cruz, California, making a pizza order the first commercial internet transaction in history, years before Amazon or eBay ever existed. Now here's the big question I want you to think about from this podcast. Dan and Frank Carney knew almost nothing about pizza when they started. They had 2 weeks of lessons, a borrowed $600, and a baby bathtub. Most people would have waited until they were more prepared, until they knew more, until the conditions were better. So here's the question. Is there something you've been waiting to start? A project, an idea, a skill? Because you don't feel ready yet? And what would happen if you just started anyway? Because the people who built one of the most recognizable brands in the world mixed their first dough in a baby bathtub. Ready is overrated. Now here's a reminder before we go. If you're enjoying Believe It or Not, follow, subscribe, or comment wherever you listen. And share this episode with someone who loves pizza, which is almost everyone. Because somewhere between a baby bathtub and $1 billion, there's a really good story. Next time on Believe It or Not, it's 1998. A man is sitting at his desk with a notebook. He's not a famous author. He's not even sure he can write a book. He's a game developer who wanted to be a cartoonist and failed. Every major syndicate he approached turned down his comic strip. So he started writing something else. Something for kids. Something funny. Something that looked like a real diary. Messy handwriting. Simple drawings. The kind of thing a real middle school kid might actually keep. He worked on it for 6 years before anyone else saw it. Then he put it on the internet. And kids read it 20 million times. Next episode, we're going to look at the surprisingly long and unlikely journey of Jeff Kinney and how Diary of a Wimpy Kid almost never existed. You won't want to miss it. Until next time, keep wondering, keep learning, and remember, sometimes the truth is weirder than fiction.